Hey, what up guys? Welcome to database integration and property files using Spring Boot. My name is Nelson, and in the previous video I've showed you guys how to develop this n-tier architecture application. So we had several layers where we had the controller layer, which was responsible to handle all the HTTP requests. Then we had a service layer which simply took the requests from the controller and simply managed all the business logic that we had. And then we had a data access layer which was simply responsible to switch between various databases. So the idea would be that you as a developer or user, you would simply go to your web browser, type a URL, and that request would go through the controller layer all the way down to the service, then the data access layer, and then all the way back and return you some data about students. So we mainly focused on the last video. We focused a lot on using fake data. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial is simply remove the fake data that we had, and I'm going to plug in a MySQL database. And instead of using some of these databases that you can simply download and install locally, such as Apache or MAMP or WAMP or PHPMyAdmin, so instead of using one of those databases, what we're going to do is simply use Amazon RDS. So the idea would be to actually launch two instances. So we're going to have two databases, one for the development purposes, and we're going to call it as the dev environment. And then we will have another one called production environment or prod environment, simply for production purposes. And the idea will be really simple. So we're going to use Spring property files to actually dictate which database that we want to connect to. So we're going to have property files, and then we will configure this with Spring profiles. And then at the end, we will have two run configurations, one called main dev and the other one called main prod. So whenever we run the main dev application, that will simply connect to the dev environment. And whenever we run the main prod, we'll simply run with the production environment database. So essentially, you can take this approach and actually use it with other services that you may have. So the idea for having two environments is that you can imagine you as a developer, having an application, you may have some users using your application right now, right? So that application is running on the production environment, and you don't want to test your new features on that production because you have real users using your production environment. And you don't want to mess up, you don't want to spoil some of the database configuration or data, or corrupt data, or lose data. A bunch of stuff could go wrong. So instead, you use a development environment for development purposes. And then once you're ready, you can actually push all your changes to the production environment. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's go ahead now and simply create a database instance from AWS. So navigate to Google and simply type AWS and pretty much click on the first link. And then I want to show you guys that you can get Amazon for free for 12 months. So just bear in mind that you have some limits, and essentially these are the limits. So for example, for a server, you have 750 hours of instance usage. The same for RDS, and for buckets you have 5 GB of standard storage, and then you have like 20,000 requests. For databases you have 10 million IOs, but you can see that this expires after 12 months. So if you are a developer like myself, I highly recommend you to experiment with some of these services because they are really, really cool. And many tech companies use Amazon for the cloud. It's pretty much, one of the best right now in the market. So I highly suggest AWS. So if you don't have an account, make sure to sign up and create one. But if you do have an account, just go ahead and sign in. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sign in. So management console, I already had my password, so I don't have to put my password, but for yourself, just go ahead and put the password. But really, you can see that we have AWS services, and they have a ton of stuff. And what I'm looking for is the database section, and I'm going to click on the RDS. So click on that, and then on this panel, so on the left hand side, just click on instances, and let's actually launch a DB instance. So I'm going to pick MySQL, and if you want to go ahead and choose Oracle or SQL Server or MariaDB, feel free to do it. I'm going to go with MySQL, select. So as you can see, we have production and then dev/test. So by the end of this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys exactly how you can have two databases and then switch depending on the profile that you're actually using with Spring. So for now, just click on MySQL dev/test, next, and then DB instance class. This is just the computer or the machine that you're actually getting for this database. So I'm going to click on that, and as you can see, you have like the bare minimum, which will give you 1 CPU and 1 gig of RAM, and then you have like all the way right here, for example, you have like 32 CPUs and 244 RAM. You know, for this tutorial, 1 CPU, 1 gig of RAM should be more than enough. So I'm going to pick that, and then multi-AZ deployment, no. So this is like if I want to get a replica for my actual database, I'm going to pick no, and then just leave things as they are. And then DB instance identifier, I'm going to say student dev, and then master username, that will be your name, and then master password, and then next, and database name, so this will be students, and then dash dev dash db, and the port will be the default one, so I'm not going to mess up with that. And pretty much everything just leave as it is and launch the instance. Oh, actually, sure. So let me just put this camel case, so, and then db all camel case, so db, and fair enough. So let me just launch now the db, and now the database is launching. So as you can see, db is being now created. So if I now view my instances, I can see that the status for this database is being creating. So let me just quickly show you guys the tool that I'm going to use to actually connect to this database and manipulate. So do like queries, create tables, and so on. So, you know, just a client. So for Mac, because I'm on a Mac, I'm going to use SQL Pro. So this is a very lightweight client that I can pretty much just connect to any database. But for Windows users, I think this is the one. So I think it's SQL and then YOG, something like this. Yeah, so this is the one. So SQL and then YOG community. So if I go to their web download page, you can see that you can download you know, a trial version, or if you want to, you know, go, you know, with a full really nice application which is really well known, just go with MySQL Workbench, and it's free. So just go ahead and download this for Windows and Mac users, I believe. So I'm not going to download this because I don't need this, and just let me go back, just let me remove that. So just give it a while, let the database finish, and then I'll show you what to do next. So the database changed its status and now it's backing up, but in the meantime we actually have what we need to connect to the database. So if you notice right here, we have an endpoint. So this is the endpoint that we can connect to the database. So if I expand this, actually not even expand, so if I pretty much click on this details button here, you can see that we have the endpoint, the port, the DB name, and then the username. So this is all the necessary information that we need to connect to this particular database. So once this database is actually fully active, we can actually connect to it. So let me go ahead now and open up SQL Pro and pretty much just copy all this information to the client. So I'm going to launch SQL Pro, so SQL Pro, and just let me put this smaller. So just let me put this aside, just like that. So the host will be the writer endpoint. So I'm going to just grab all of that, Command C or Control C if you are on Windows. And then username, this is my username, so your name. And then the password, so mine was and then the database, this is optional, but we can go, oh actually yeah, so this the database now is available. So okay, cool. So yeah, so the details were okay, database, yeah. So the database is actually optional, but we can go ahead and put it or not, so it's really optional. And the same with the port, because the port is 3306, as you can see here. So let me just try and connect. Actually, let me give this a name. So students and then dev. So let me just try and connect, or actually test the connection first. And you can see that the connection succeeded. So if you have any issues connecting to this database, all you have to do is go to, actually let me expand this. So you have to go to security groups right here, security groups, and then go to actions and then edit inbound rules. So we're going to edit that and then change that from custom to anywhere. So this just makes sure that you can connect to this database not just from your IP address, but from any IP address. So I'm just going to leave that as it is now. I'm going to save that. And if I go back to my client and if I test the connection, so the connection succeeded, and I'm going to connect now. So I've just connected, and if I go to choose database, you can see that we have student dev DB. So, it's picking up all the information that we need from our database. I'm just going to pick that. And that's it, guys. We are good to go. So from now on, we shall just use IntelliJ and Spring Boot with JDBC Template and actually connect to this database and then write to it and modify the database and do all the cool stuff that we have to do. So the boring bit is done. So now let's just code. Okay guys, so in order for us to connect to our database using Spring Boot, we have to add a data source and then use Spring property files to specify the URL, username, and password. So let's go ahead and do that now. So if you've missed the previous tutorial where I created this application, simply go ahead to this URL, which I will leave in the description below, and download the source code. So you can either clone or download, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to clone this and then create a separate branch and then push that so all of you can have access to the changes made in this tutorial. So I'm going to clone this. So I'm going to grab that, just let me minimize this, and what I'm going to do is right in my desktop, actually let me just open terminal. So I'm going to open terminal and then I'm going to cd into my desktop, and then I'm going to say git clone, and then just let me right click, paste, and enter. This will simply clone the repo, and I need to specify my password. So my password is yada yada yada, and that's done. So what I'm going to do is open this with IntelliJ. So this is the Ultimate Edition, and I specifically downloaded this Ultimate Edition because it provides you know, a lot of support for Spring and Spring Boot applications, which Community doesn't. So if you have the Community, then you know you can use it and get the same output, but you know it's just a bit nicer with the Ultimate Edition. I don't have a license, so my one will expire in 30 days. I'm just using the Ultimate for this tutorial. Otherwise, I would just simply use the Community as my everyday today job. So I'm going to open this project. I'm going to navigate into my desktop and then simply open the POM file. And I'm going to open as a project. And just let me say deny, as this is the first time. And now, you know, it goes ahead and downloads, you know, everything that needs to download for this project. So just give it a while. That's done now. So just let me show you something really quickly. So if I open up any browser and type Spring and then MySQL, and just pretty much click on the section 29, so this very first link, and you'll see that they say that we have to configure a data source. But if I simply scroll down a little bit, they say that they prefer the Tomcat pooling data source for its performance and concurrency. So you know you can use that, or you can use HikaryCP. So I've used HikaryCP, and I'm going to use this one for this tutorial, but feel free to use Tomcat pooling. So to use this data source, I simply have to say HikaryCP and then Maven, and I'm going to click on the first link, and then just let me get the latest version. Click on that, and then I'm going to open my POM file. And no, I don't want none of that. I should have had a git ignore, but no, I'm not going to add none of that. And don't ask me again. And in my dependencies, I'm going to add that, and that goes ahead and downloads. So I'm going to enable auto imports. And now if I go back to the same link that I was before, and now simply scroll down, you'll see that data source configuration is controlled by external configuration properties in Spring property data source, and then star. So the star means that these are the different attributes that we can actually use. So you see that we have URL, password, and username, and you know the class name and whatnot. So let's go ahead and open up source, and then under source we have main, and then we have Java, but we also have resources. So go ahead and create a new directory and then call this resources, enter, and then right click on that folder and mark as resources root. And now I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it application.properties. And this has to be literally application.properties. So enter, and now we can specify all the properties. So if I say Spring and then dot, and then you can see that we have, you know, autocomplete with the ultimate version and highlighting as well. With community, we don't have none of that. So I'm going to say data source, and then source dot URL, and this is the URL, and then spring dot data source, and then username, and then spring dot data source dot password. So really, just let me open up AWS. It should be right here, and let me just expand this, and this is the endpoint. So remember, we have the endpoint right here. So we have writer endpoint. I'm gonna pick this one here because it has the port as well. So just let me pretty much just grab all of that, Command C, go back, and then paste that in, and then the name of the database. So just let me go back just 1 second so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So you can see that this is the URL, and then the host, and then the actual database. So our database is, if you don't remember, it's called students dev DB. So I'm going to paste that in there, and then the username is your name, and then the password is hello 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So this is not a good approach to actually specify passwords like this, but for this tutorial I'm going to just leave it as it is because it's just straightforward. So one thing that we have to do as well is, so if I go back, you'll see that we have this driver, right? So we have to get the JDBC driver for our project, because at the moment we don't have one. So just let me go to Google and then say JDBC driver and then Maven, and then we will get the driver for this project. So just let me get actually I can even go with the latest one, it doesn't really matter, it should work. So Command C, and then go back to my POM file, and then after my Hikary Datasource, paste that in. So that will download now the connector, and just give it a second. There we go. So right now we've just configured the connection to the database, the data source, and the connector. So now nothing really changed apart from the configuration. So if I run this project, it should work as before. So if I open up my main, and you'll see that I do have this error, and that's because I haven't defined the actual SDK. So I'm going to click on this button, configure, and then plus, and then JDK. And yes, so yeah, so this is the one, JDK 1.8, and then open, and then OK. So that's fine now, and the error should go away. Just give it a second. So that's done. Let me right click on main and then debug main. And the reason why I debug all the time is because I can put a breakpoint always, and instead of actually stopping the application and then debug. So you can see that the application started successfully. We have the Spring logo right here, and if I open up my browser and type localhost and then 8080 and then students, you'll see that we have this nice JSON. So this is from the previous video. So now we have everything configured properly. Let's go ahead and write some code that will actually manipulate the database. So in order to write our code, we need to implement our interface. And with this interface, all we have to use is JDBC Template to actually perform all the SQL queries. So let's go ahead and download JDBC Template, which comes under the, I think it's JDBC Core package, and that has JDBC in it, or JDBC Template in it, and then we can execute some queries. So let's go ahead and do that now. So if I pretty much just close this, we don't need that. And actually, just let me tell you something. So you saw that I didn't specify this last property in my property file, and that's because Spring auto detects the driver that it is present and just uses that. So if you had like 2 drivers, then you'd simply be explicit. but because I only have one driver, I don't have to specify this last property. So just let me close this as well. I don't need this. Let me close that and open up a new tab, and let me type Spring and then JDBC and click on the first link. And I just want to show you something quickly. Right here it says that this is the package and then contains JDBC template. So let's go ahead and get that. So let me just say JDBC template and then Maven, and I'm going to get that, and I'm going to get the 4.3.4 release, and this is the central repository. So grab that and then put that in my POM file as always. So after my connector, and now that gets Spring JDBC, so that's done. So let me go back to my browser and I can close this, and if I scroll straight to the top, you'll see that JDBC, Spring JDBC provides a lot of things for us, right? So if you've done some JDBC in plain Java, sometimes it can be really tedious, but Spring JDBC provides a way that we can interact with our database without having to do much, to be honest. So you can see that defining the connection parameters, that's us. Opening the connection, that's actually Spring that manages that. So if you remember, we had this driver manager, and then we had to call the create connection before, so we don't have to do none of that now. Also specify the SQL statement, that's us. The parameters that we may have, that's us. But check this out: prepare and execute statements, that's them. Then set up the loop, that's them. So that we don't actually have to iterate through the result set as we used to do before. And do the work for each iteration, that's actually us developers. And then process any exception, handle transactions, close the connection statement, and result set is all handled by Spring. So which means that we have to do as little work as possible, and it's really cool. So let me just show you guys exactly how this works. So now that I have my Spring JDBC template, so let's go ahead and open up the service that we had before. So this is our service, and you remember that we had this Mongo data, and this Mongo data is a bean that we defined in our DAO. So this is the one. So now we will define another bean. So this bean will be responsible to connect to our MySQL database. So I'm going to call this MySQL student DAO, and then so just let me follow the same pattern as I did before. So I'm gonna press OK, and then I'm going to say that this is at repository. So this is a repository, and then I'm going to give this a name, and this will be MySQL. So just like that, MySQL. And if I just show you guys this class, so fake and both Mongo, they do implement our interface. So that's what I'm going to do now, is within this I'm going to say implements and then student DAO, and then I need to implement those methods. So I've just pressed Alt and then enter, and then implement those methods. So these are the methods, and there we go. So no errors. So what I have to do now is use JDBC template to perform all the queries and use these methods right here to return the collections or student, or remove or update or insert. So let's actually do that. So I'm going to say private and then JDBC Template, and then this will be JDBC Template. So remember that because this is actually a class which is provided by Spring Boot or Spring Framework, I can auto wire this. So usually you would say that this is equals to new and then JDBC template, and then if I say control space, you'll see that we have to specify a data source. So because we have our data source configuration within our property files, we don't have to do none of this. So instead, what we can do is, if I delete that, I can say at auto wired. So you've seen this before. At auto wired simply instantiates this bean and then injects the data source for us. That's pretty much what it does. So now let's go ahead and use some SQL. So if you've never done some SQL in your entire life, don't worry, because it's really simple. So let's actually implement this first method. So we want to read from our database, right? So we have to select. So open up your web browser and then simply say MySQL and then database WC3 and click on the first link, and essentially you'll see like they'll give you like a description of what MySQL is, and then right here you see like how to connect, create a database, create table, insert, and select, delete, update, and all of that. So we're going to implement this first method, right? And this simply gets all the students, which means that this will be a select data. So if I click on that, you'll see that the statement is simply this. So it's like select, and then you give a list of columns or column, and then from, and then the table name. So just let me grab that and put it in our code, just like so. Let me comment that out, and we're going to use JDBC, of course, actually JDBC template. So I'm going to say JDBC template, and then the method that I need to use is query. So query will give me a list, and the list contains everything in that particular table. So now I need to pass a statement or a SQL statement. So I'm going to say select, and then I want ID, and then name, and then course, from, and then students, just like so. And just look at this. So select, and then the columns, so ID, name, and course, and then from, and then the table name, which is students. So if I now press Command P, you'll see that we can, on the third line, we can specify a row mapper. So this row mapper is responsible to iterate through our result set and then give us the particular record that we are interested in. So I'm going to say new, and then row mapper, and then the object for that will be students. So I'm working with students, so that'll be student, and I'm getting errors because I need to implement this interface. So Alt Enter, and this has one method called map row. And as you can see now, every time that we map, we have access to the result set. So I can simply create a student, and then let me call this student equals to new student. And now I can set all the fields that I need. So I'm going to say student dot set ID, and then to get the ID from that row, I can say result set dot get int, and then I can either give it a column index or the label name. So I prefer label name, so I'm going to say ID, and then student dot set name, and then rs result set dot get string, and then that's name. So as you can see, we have column label and then SQL. So this is from IntelliJ Ultimate, so it's really nice. So let me just fill the course. So set course, and that's going to be result set dot get string, and then column label is course. So just like so. And instead of returning null now, I can return my student, just like that. So now at the end of my method, and instead of returning null, I can return this entire statement, because this gives me a list. So I'm going to select that and go to refactor and then extract variable. And you can see that we have a list. So I'm going to call this students, and then I'm going to return students. So just let me refactor this statement as well. So Alt Command V, and then that's the SQL statement, enter, and this should be final, just like so. To run this now, I have to change my student service to use my SQL. So my SQL comes from this repository bin, or actually this bin, which I named my SQL. So let me run this, and perhaps we may have errors, but let's see what the error is, and then I will explain what is going on. So this has just started, and fair enough, we do have one error, and the error is URL must start with JDBC. Fair enough. Let me open my application.properties, and sure, so this should be JDBC, and then column my SQL, and then column // and the error should go away. So just let me run that again, and just give it a second, and there we go. So there we go. So the application started properly. So now if I open up the web browser and type localhost 8080 and then students, let's see, what do we get? Oops. Okay, we do have an error, and the error is, if I go up, students doesn't exist. Wow, exactly. So we have to create our table called students. On this plus icon, I'm going to add students. So this is a table, and then I want ID to be my primary key. So just let me expand this, and then we have name, and then name will be a text, or actually varchar, and let's say that the length of this is like 50. And we have also course, and this course is also varchar, so varchar, and let it be, I don't know, 50 as well, and boom, that's it. So let me now open content, and you can see that we have ID, name, course. So if I now add a new student, so on this plus icon, let this be 1, and then let this be Alex, and then let this be finance, and let's add another student 2, and then let's call this Anna, and then Anna does computer science, just like so, enter. And now if I run my code, or actually I don't even need to stop, right? Let me just run my request again. So if I run this now, hopefully we should get Alex and Anna from our DB. So guys, we managed to connect to our instance that we created using AWS, and now we're good to go. So as you can see, we have some data coming back from the actual database. So let me just add another student. So let this be 3, and this will be John, and oops, course will be, I don't know, design, so graphic design. So just like that, and if I now refresh, you'll see that we have John and he studies design. So how cool is this, guys? So now let's implement the rest of the methods. So get student by ID. So this is pretty much just getting one student, right? Just one record. So the syntax for the SQL query will be the same as get all students, but we will have to change this at the end. So as you can see, we have this ID, so we're going to use that by saying where and then ID equals to and then question mark. So this is actually a prepared statement, and this ID will simply be replaced with this question mark, and this simply avoids SQL injection. So now what I have to do is simply use JDBC template. So JDBC template dot and then query. But this time we're not just going to query to get everything from the database. We will query for a single object, and then I'm going to pass the SQL and then my new row mapper with student, and then at the end I will simply pass ID. And now this is complaining because I need to implement the method, just like so. And instead of returning null, I'm going to return the exact same thing, just like that. Paste that in, and you'll see that IntelliJ is actually complaining about duplicate code. So let's go ahead and actually refactor this a little bit. So let's create a class. So at the top, I'm going to say private and then static class and then student row mapper implements and then row mapper, and then this row mapper will simply be a student, and then I need to implement, sorry, my computer is just making noise because it's not handling IntelliJ properly, but let's carry on. So let me implement the method. So Alt enter, and I'm going to implement map row, and then I will simply copy this, Command C, and then there. And now I can simply remove all of this, so all of this, and then simply say new student row mapper, just like so. And right here I can do the same thing. Let's just remove all of this and then say new student row mapper. So as you can see now, the code, or our code, looks much neater. So so it's not complaining anymore. So yeah, as you can see, the code looks, much neater. So instead of returning null now, I can simply return this. So I'm going to refactor this, select that, and then Alt Command V, and then that will give me a student, name that student, and then simply return student. Actually, I don't need two returns. So just let me go ahead again. So let me just copy this, put it there, and then where, and then column equals, and then value, so you can have this for reference. So essentially what we're doing is creating a SQL statement, and then this is the same as before. Select ID, name, course, from, and then the table is students, where ID equals to question mark. This question mark will be replaced by this ID, and then we have to pass the ID in the query for object method, just like so, and then we simply return student. So let's go ahead and refresh our application. So just let me click on that, stop and rerun, and we shouldn't get any errors, hopefully. There we go. So the application started, and if I now go to Chrome, and then let me just refresh this, so you see that it is working. So now if I want to get, let's say, John, I will simply put / and then John's ID is 3, so let me just say 3, and there we go. So as you can see, this is working just fine. So if I say 2, it gives me Anna, and then 1 is Alex. So that's it, guys. So as you can see, it was really easy to implement get student by ID. So let's now implement remove student by ID. So let me just show you again the actual SQL statement. So to delete, so MySQL delete data, and then delete from table name where some column and then value. So let me just copy that and put it right here and just comment that. And to delete, we have to use JDBC template, of course. And then instead of using query and query for object, what we're going to do is use the update. So update is mainly for removing, insert, and updates. And then everything else is just query. So whenever you want to get, you use the query. Whenever you want to perform some alteration, you use update. So I'm going to use update, and as you can see, we have update with the SQL, and then with arguments, and then with arguments, but this time you can pass a bunch of an array which contains the arguments essentially. So let me just use update, and then the SQL will be delete, and then from, and then students where, and then ID equals to question mark, and I will simply pass ID, and I don't have to do anything else. So this is just it. So let's go ahead and implement the update, and I will show you how this works in a second. So update, let me just show you guys, update data. So just let me grab this, update table name, and then we have to set all the columns. So if I paste that in, oops, and then simply comment this. So actually, just let me remove this SQL statement from there. It's always good to have it separate. So declare as final, and so this will be JDBC template, and then dot update, and then the SQL statement, so SQL, and then we have to pass the student ID. So I'm going to say ID, and I'm going to create a variable, so final, and then string SQL equals 2, and then update, and then we will update name equals to question mark, and then course equals to question mark, where, and then the column. So we have to say where ID equals to question mark, just like so. And then I'm going to create a variable int ID equals to student dot get ID, and then we'll simply pass ID into our update method. And I'm actually will have to pass not just ID, but this will be an array because I do have 3 question marks. So instead, what I can do is simply say new, and then object, and then this will be an object array because I do have ints and strings, and now I can simply pass in the order that they are actually being passed. So let me just create another variable, so int, and then name equals to student dot get name, and then course, so course, actually this is string, my bad, sorry. And then the course is also a string, course equals to student dot get course, and let me just put them both final, just like so, and then simply pass first is name, so this will be name, and then course, and then ID, just like so. So, you know, straightforward. So we're just getting the SQL and then getting all the attributes from the student and then simply updating the student. So let's now go ahead and insert to the database. So the statement for insert is really easy. So insert data, and you can see that we have insert into table, and then we give a list of columns and then values. So let's go ahead and do that. So just let me grab this so you can see, and just let me paste that in and then comment this, and then let's say final string SQL equals 2, and then we'll say insert into students, and then the column will be let's just say course, or actually name and course, because ID will be incremented automatically for us. And then I can say values, and then we will simply have question mark and then question mark, and the values will be simply the actual name and course. So let me just grab this line and then just put it right after the SQL statement, and then this will be the same thing. So we will update, and instead of ID we will simply pass name and the actual course. So this should be it, guys. Let's actually go ahead and test and see if our code works fine. So let me just refresh this. And my computer is making some noise again. I'm really sorry for the noise, guys. I need to get a new Mac, but yeah, so let's go ahead and actually test the remove student, update and insert using Postman. So I'm going to open Postman. So if you don't have Postman, go ahead and download it through the Google Web Store, and you can get also a REST advanced REST client, which is also good. So let me just simply perform a GET request to localhost and then port 8080 / students, and then as you can see everything is working fine. Let's actually get John, send, and we do get John. So let's actually now modify John because we missed graphic design. So that has to be a put request, and in the body this will be a raw, and then the type will be JSON. So just let me grab all of this, copy there, and then this will be graphic design and send. And okay, so put is not supported. Okay, that's because we're not sending the actual ID through the URL, my bad. And send this, and we also have an error. Okay, most likely we have a syntax error in our SQL, so fair enough. This is meant to be update and then table name, so students, and then we have to say set. My bad, I really forgot this. So let me just rerun again. So just give it a second. There we go. So let's go back to Postman and send the same request. Loading, and there we go, 200. So if I now get students, send, and you'll see that we have John studies graphic design. So let's now delete Alex. So Alex is number 1, and this has to be a delete, send, and then let's actually get all students again. So get students, send, and you can see Alex is now in the database. And let me just grab that. And now let's actually insert a new student. So I'm going to say post, and then this is localhost and then students, and in the body I will simply say raw, and then this has to be JSON. Let me just actually grab the previous student, which was John, and let's add no ID because that will be auto generated. And let's add Saeed. So Saeed, and Saeed does maths, just like so. And if I send this, there we go, 200. And let's add another student. So let's say we have Aisha, and Aisha does cookery, just like that. And send, there we go. And let's also add math, math and math studies, I don't know, finance as well. So send that, and if I now get all the students, and you see that we have everything in our database. So as you can see, guys, this is working really beautiful, and that's the power of implementing to an interface, is that we can switch our implementation with just one single line of code. And that single line of code was actually in our service. So we had to just change this to MySQL, and then the implementation was, just using the interface, just implementing the interface, and then that worked fine. We didn't have to change any code whatsoever. So let me just get it through here, and actually just let me just get Chrome and then extensions. And let me just enable this really nice extension, which is JSON view. And if I refresh this, you see that this is now formatted. So let me just show you guys in SQL Pro. So as you can see, it's not updated, and that's because we have to refresh, and there we go. As you can see, we have all the changes that we had. So as you can see, JDBC template is not really difficult to use. So for getting information, we use query, and this simply gets all the rows from that table. Query for object gets only one record from that table because we have the where clause, but we could also use the query method and then simply extract the first element from that list. And remove, update, and insert were pretty much the same thing, apart from the SQL statement and passing the arguments right here. So now let me go ahead and show you guys how to use Spring profiles. Okay guys, so we are in the final part of this tutorial, and this now should be really straightforward, so probably 5 minutes or so. So what we're going to do is launch another RDS instance and then use property files with Spring profiles to actually dictate which database that we want to connect. So we will simply create two run configurations, one for main dev and one for main prod, and then just run as we want. So let's go ahead and launch the RDS instance. So if I open up Amazon Web Services, just let me log in and go to instances, and as you can see, in this instance I've got 3 connections. And let's launch another instance, and then MySQL, and then I'm going to use this Amazon Aurora recommended, and this is for production, by the way. And next, and as you can see right here, so the instance is much bigger this time because this is for production. So you'll see that we have only these choices. So we have large, extra large, and then we have like 32 CPU and huge amount of memory. So if you want to test, you have to actually pay, because this is not under the free tier that they give us for 12 months. But if you have the money, go ahead and launch one of these. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to launch another dev, and this pretty much will be the same thing. So 1 CPU, and then AZ deployment no, and then identifier, this will be students prod. Username will be let's say your name, and then password this time will be different, and then next, and then the database will be student, and then prod db, and then the port, let's change the port to something really random, so 7890, and then just launch the database. So as you can see, the database is being created, so I can view my instances, and this will be available very shortly. Okay guys, so the database is now available, so let's go ahead and use it. So what I'm going to do is, in my application.properties, I'm going to change this slightly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this writer endpoint, just like so, and put it in its own variable or its own property. So this will be our own one. So your name dot database dot writer endpoint, and equals to that. And then I'm going to take also the port, so port, and then I'm going to say your name dot database dot port equals to that, and then your name dot database dot name equals to student dev db. And just let me give some space, and then to use it right here, all I have to do is simply remove that, and then place $, and then curly braces, and then simply pass the name, so your name database dot writer endpoint, just like so, and then the port, the same for the port. Just let me grab that $, and then curly braces, and then that, and then the same with db name, just like so, and then $, curly braces, and then that. So now this makes it easy to manage and configure. So what I'm going to do is create another application.properties, but instead just let me Command C and Command V, and this will be -dev.properties, and let me duplicate that, and this will be -prod.properties, and then in the prod one I'm going to get the writer endpoint, just like that, and change it to that, and then the port will be different, and then the database name is student prod db. So essentially what's going on here is that we have three properties. So the first application property will be the default in case no profile is active, and then we have application-dev when the dev profile is active, and then the prod if the prod is active. So this is one way to do it, but we could also do it with YAML files and have it all in one file. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to do it this way because I think it's a bit easier to understand and follow. So now let's go ahead and use the prod environment, or actually let's test our changes and see that it works. So just let me refresh that and just give it a second. So no errors, good sign. And let me open up Chrome and let me simply refresh, and boom, so everything is working fine, the changes that we made. So let's now connect to the prod environment. So stop the application, and then right here on this button, edit configurations, and then we will add another configuration, and this is application, and then I'm going to call this students prod, and in the VM options I'm going to say -d and then spring dot profiles dot active equals to prod, just like so, and then apply. And let me create another one for dev. So main class, actually I forgot to add the main class right here, so that's the main class, and then right here will be the same. So just let me copy this, and the main class will be our main, and then in the VM options -d spring profiles.active and then dev, and then this will be students dev, and then we could have another one just for in case none of these profiles is active. So just let me say another application, and then let me call it students, and then the main class is our main, and then just let me say apply and OK. So now you can see that we have three run configurations. So students dev, students prod. So let's test our students prod and debug that. And if you see, if I scroll up, actually go all the way to the top, you'll see that we do have a message saying, just let me find that. So we have a message saying prod. So you can see the following profiles are prod. So we're using the prod application dot properties. So just let me open that up and go to debug, and let's now test up the application. So if I refresh, I should get an error, that's for sure. And that's because the error says that using password yes, and that's because we haven't changed the password. So let's go ahead and change the password now. So the password was the same thing but reverse, so just like that, and let's run that again. So as you can see, using prod, and if I refresh this, just give it a second, and we should have another error, and it says address already in use. Fair enough. So what I'm going to do, close and open up my edit configurations and single instance only, apply, OK, and if I run that again, that should be good to go. So no more errors, so no more problems. So this is ready now, and if I try and get students, we should get an error, that's for sure. Just give it a second, and that's because I just want to show you guys all the errors. Students prod dot students doesn't exist, right? And that's because we haven't created the table in the students prod database. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up SQL Pro and then go to file and then new connection tab, and this will be students prod, and the host will be different. So the host will be that, and let me just replace that in there. So just let me say that this is that, and then this is your name, and then the password is, and then the port was 7890, and let's test the connection. Succeeded, and let's connect. Actually, I forgot to add that to favorites, but whatever. So now let's choose the database. So students prod, and let me actually get let me dump this table. So what I'm going to do is, under table info, I can pretty much just get this statement and then go back to my students prod and then say query, and then pass that query and then select and then run selection. And as you can see, we have now students. And if I go back to my browser and refresh, as you can see, the database is empty. So let me just go ahead with Postman and simply add one student. So let me just say that this is a put, or actually post, and then localhost, and then students, and then the body raw, and this will be application.json, and then let's add mat, and then send, and that should be it. That's okay. Let me go to the browser and then refresh, and there we go, guys. So this is coming from the prod database. Now let me just show you how you can run the jar file. So open up IntelliJ and then simply go to view and then tools, and then you can go to Maven projects, or right here you'll see Maven projects, then expand lifecycle and then install, and that will build the jar file. As you can see, build success. Open up your target folder, and then you can see that we have this Spring Boot 1.0 snapshot.jar. So to run this, open up and then simply reveal in Finder or Explorer. And what I'm going to do is simply navigate to that. So I'm going to say go to shell, and just let me kill that, and just let me stop my IntelliJ. So just let me stop that, and then open up browser and then refresh. You'll see that we have nothing. So to execute that, all I have to do is simply say java and then -d and then spring.profiles.active equals 2, and then let's say actually let's say dev now. So dev and then -jar and then the name of the jar. So just let me say Spring Boot 1.0 snapshot.jar, and then execute that, and you'll see that this is the same thing that you saw in IntelliJ, but we're just doing this through the command line. And if I scroll up, you will see that we have the dev active, so that's good sign. And if I now refresh, you'll see that we have data coming from the dev environment. And if I now stop my server and then simply change that to prod, just like that, prod, and just give it a second, you'll see that prod is now active right here. And if I refresh, only mat should come up. There we go. And if I don't specify any profile, you will see that the dev environment will be used. So that's the default. So if I run that, just give it a second, and if I scroll up, you'll see that right here, no active profile set. So it's falling back to the default. So if I refresh now, you'll see that we have the dev, you'll see that we have data coming from the dev environment. So one last thing, so essentially I forgot to change the security group on the prod. So if you forgot to do that, simply expand student prod and then instance action or actually, sorry, my bad. Click on this icon and then scroll down, and then you'll see like security groups. Simply click on that just to make sure that we have the right security group, and then actions, and then go to edit inbound rule, and then you can change this to anywhere. So essentially, if this is your production database, then you may want like you know, all your users to connect to this database. Otherwise it will just be your machine, nothing else. And also so just let me save this. And also, if I go back to my instances, so essentially remember that I told you that you have 750 hours of usage. So if you're not using your database, just make sure to shut it down, because if you exceed the 750 hours, then you will be charged. So you know, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, I forgot to shut down one of my instances, and I got charged like 26 quid, or $26 to be precise. You know, it's not that expensive, but if you don't see like bills into your account or invoices, yeah, just shut it down. So that's what I want to do now. Just let me stop my application, stop that, and then to shut it down, all you do is expand, and then instance action, and then delete. And then you say that you don't want to create a snapshot, and you can acknowledge. So if you want to, you know, have a snapshot of your database, just go ahead and create, but I don't need none of that. Delete. And then the same for prod. So expand, actions, delete, and then no final snapshot, acknowledge, and delete. So this is now deleting. And also I'm going to put the entire source code under this same Git repo, but instead I'm going to create a separate branch. So you will see 2 by the time you watch this video. So this will be 2, and then simply click on that, and then just go to that branch where I will name like AWS RDS or whatever, and then just get that, and simply just replace your config file, and then create your database tables, and you're good to go. So this is it, guys. We managed to do quite a lot in this video, and this is really cool stuff, and you can take everything that you learned from this tutorial and, you know, start writing some you know, web applications. You know, you can start doing your you know, coursework, assignments, and even finally your projects with this sample project. So I know that, you know, there's a lot to cover, you know, configuration, sticking the front end, metrics, security, JPA, Hibernate. You know, there's tons that you can do with Spring Boot, but really I really hope that this was really useful, and you can take everything that you learned from this and build awesome stuff. So let me know what you guys want to see in the next video. I was thinking maybe, you know, just touch on property files a bit more, and that should be really quickly, like 10 minutes video. Just let me know if you want to see that, or maybe a React front end to interact with our databases. But yeah, so just let me know whatever you want to see. So don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. See ya.